Friends Video Games.
Best Friends Video Games.
Best Friends Video Games.
Play games?
Wow.
I'm not sure how successful that was.
Again?
What are we doing? I don't understand.
I don't know. It's because it has to coincide with the theme tune ending.
I thought we just did that at the start of the podcast.
This is the start of the podcast.
Oh,
Are we recording?
We're on.
We're recording. We're on. We're doing
That's
it
got
right.
material to make the theme song from all that.
Can we start again? Do you get this every week, just out of interest, Sergeant?
No, it's not this bad.
Oh, this bodes well.
This podcast is bogus.
Best
Friends
Video Games.
What are video games?
Yay.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is the BFVG British Broadcasting Company. And this evening we are going to discuss tangential learning in video games. That is things you can reap from the video games industry that have applications to things outside of video games themselves. Can anybody translate that into good English? Because I'm nervous, and I get like this when I'm nervous.
I think what Felix is trying to say is we're all going to be very pretentious.
Yes. Tangentially, I was saying that.
We're all going to try and convince ourselves that playing video games isn't a complete and utter waste of time by finding ways in which the knowledge you garner in them can be applied into the world around us.
Okay. Yes. So essentially, we are putting video games on trial.
And I disagree with that kind of on principle that we don't need to defend them. This is an argument that doesn't need to be had. But I'll humour the rest of you.
Oh,
The contention begins.
I believe
I
Judge
did
Jury and
actually-
Executioner has already passed what they need to do, and
I did get out
what
my
we're doing
black
is flogging
polo
the dead
shirt.
horse after it has already been executed.
Well, we've finished this podcast before we've even begun it. I think that's a good place to begin.
It's a good place to end it.
Okay. By putting them on trial, I mean I have actually had to defend this notion several times to people over the age of 35. The most recent person being my mother, who was describing them as, and she said, mindless. And I used Dear Esther recently to sort of counter that, not just by sort of showing the artistic capital that video games can have. I don't know. I mean, have you guys ever played Dear Esther?
I thought you were going to
but
say
I've
video
seen-
games.
Oh.
That's the controversial thing about video games. It's kind of, a lot of people are arguing it's more of a video installation than a game because games have to have some kind of failure state in them. Where it doesn't have to be exactly game over, but it has to be mission failed. You've caused yourself trouble. You've impeded your progress through the storyline or the narrative
you can
in
impede your
some way.
progress by not moving.
I drowned myself twice in Dear Esther.
You can also just get lost and never find your way back.
And then it also should we actually describe what this game is to our avid BFVG listeners?
Yes.
For those who don't know, go look up Dear Esther on Wikipedia.
And should we play some sort of music while they go and do that?
I'll edit that in now.
Good.
And we're back.
Now that you're enlightened about Dear Esther, we can continue.
Okay.
But seriously, guys, it's a game where basically there are meant to be clues planted around this kind of island, this open world space. It's a beautiful game. It's beautifully rendered, a lot of textures. It looks like a Scottish Highland Isle. It's very windswept, very pretty. But I think the goal of it is to try and find clues to something that happened there, and you're not quite sure what happened.
I think that's.
And there are certain patterns drawn in the sand, and there's certain things that you find in different rooms and different buildings. But
See, one thing that confuses me about Dear Esther is why it was controversial in the first place. In terms of why was there even a disagreement about what it was.
So I haven't played Dear Esther, but I've heard plenty about it, and the problems people seem to have with it was, sorry to use this word again, but people found it pretentious. They thought that it was looking to have a level of artfulness that it didn't deliver on.
I think
and other people found that it didn't really, again, this is what we're talking about, it didn't justify being called a video game because it wasn't really in any serious way interactive.
Sure.
I think
you are
to,
right in that.
I think to impede on the kind of intentions of someone making a game and just calling it pretentious is a kind of way too dismissive an argument.
It's a bit lazy, isn't it?
Yeah, it's like everything has an artistic value according to different people. It's extremely subjective. I mean, to call something just flat out pretentious is kind of like,
it's not a word that should be used lightly.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Like unless you know a person is being actively, say, uncultured about anything, and then tries to do this in a superficial nature, then you can say it. But I think you have to be really certain of that thing before you start throwing around the P word.
The P word. Did you just call me the P word?
Yeah.
Anyway,
Yeah.
with Dear Esther, you can actually differentiate it from a film, not just through the fact that you are, in some respects, interacting with it, and that you are, you are tunneling this man through an albeit linear progression of events, but you are actually interacting. Or you're the one who's driving this individual.
Yeah,
but the way it actually is different from a film is that what happens is that there are certain cues in this linear progression which triggers a soundbite.
Yeah.
And that soundbite is from a repertoire of soundbites that are bigger than the cues. So you will have a completely different set of soundbites during each playthrough. And that's something you would never get with a film. If anything, I think it's more like one of those, the create your own adventure books we had when we were in school, rather than a film.
Yeah. Are we getting a bit off track? Because I think we need to talk more about the tangential learning of things rather than whether it's a game or not.
Oh, that's
This
just
is
one thing that you can sort of reap from video games is that it's as I said, cultural capital.
Yeah.
But, I mean,
and
just
as a
to
result
finish
of
on-
that, sorry.
To finish on Dear Esther, was your mum won over by it?
Yes, I didn't. I didn't complete it, and I told her the ending, and I'm not going to say it at this point because the ending is very good. It's very moving, and I think people are just confusing emotional investment with a game being overtly pretentious.
Yeah.
But I told her about that, and she said it's the sort of thing she would want to see, and she said it was certainly a unique experience. So that's just one thing you can sort of reap from video. And I'm not trying to say you get that with all video games, but I'm just saying there is probably more variation in the experience you get than you would with films.
Yeah.
But what would you guys say for other aspects of sort of? The term I use is tangential learning.
Yeah.
I mean,
the
thing that jumped. Go on, Arjun.
Sorry, I was going to say. Actually, no. Let's wrap it up without what Alex has to say.
Just the thing we're talking about. What I always remember is there used to be a time where games were kind of, and I'm talking like 10 years ago, maybe even 15 years ago, when I was just kind of getting in on video games, when you had these things called edutainment.
Oh yes.
Probably one of the worst combination of terms or portmanteaus or whatever that you'd ever come across, where you'd get these crappy educational games. And what I remember from growing up with the first PC games I played was games that weren't that, were games that there was a point to playing but that could also teach you something at the same time. So the first PC game I ever played was Civilization 2. Which I hope I don't need to explain to anybody what Civilization is.
Yeah.
Maybe
assume.
Dean.
Yeah.
We'll let Figures 333 get onto that in the next podcast.
I think Dean is a big fan of Civilization.
Only the game.
But in that game, it comes with a full an encyclopedia, or indeed civilopedia, for every type of building, type of units that you want to look at. You can see what it does in the game, and also a brief summary of what its like place in history was, or what its importance was, and that was kind of really cool. When you're like looking at this stuff and you're thinking, okay, what does this do in the game? Oh, right, this thing was like an important thing to the Aztecs, or this was an important thing to like the early Chinese civilizations.
Yeah.
And it's the sort of thing that just acts as a springboard.
And it's not there in your face. It's there if you want to look for it. You can like.
It doesn't sort of
spend
put a
time on
pause. It doesn't make you sort of like put the brakes on the gameplay unless you really want to put the brakes on it and then look it up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which
also,
is sorry.
I'd say about Civilization, it's very good at teaching you how diplomacy and wars would work in times gone by in a way that you don't get with strategy games like Age of Empires. It certainly taught me the value of not opening a war on two fronts.
Or, never trusting Gandhi.
Yes.
Ever.
a lesson for the
Who
ages.
happens to be one of the largest warmongers in the game, I think.
I
Don't you
know,
agree,
and
Gertie?
why India put him on their currency is beyond me. Why would they celebrate, history's greatest warmonger?
Yeah.
I'd also point out.
All I'm saying is sort it out, India.
Pharaoh was another game that did that really well. That it just had like a little question mark at the top of each thing. If you were, I think I didn't know what a bazaar was until I played Pharaoh, and that taught me what a bazaar was. So there's an example of how it's not front and center. It's not the point of the game is to learn, because that would be off-putting to anybody who wanted to play a game, or to a lot of people who'd want to play a game. But you can still learn something from it.
Yeah.
So is the best way for a game to teach us things by disguising the lessons within like an entertaining?
Are you saying
kind
it's
of
like
system?
a subversive form of gaming?
Maybe not the best way.
Sorry, not even subversive. Sort of a gaming. You're coerced into learning.
Exactly.
It's not so much coercion. It's a very you could play Civilization and learn all of its mechanics by not reading anything that's there. It's kind of there if you want it. It's a resource. It's like a library.
It really kind of adds texture to a world, though.
Yeah, it does. It does.
I mean, if you look at, I don't know, excuse me. Ooh, that was horrible. That really, really smelled. Please edit that out.
This isn't a smellacast. We didn't smell your burp.
We haven't found that technology yet.
Oh, seriously, I basically just had bacon and salt for dinner.
So we're learning about Felix's
This
diet.
certainly is tangential learning.
I think it's just tangential.
So what was it? Yeah.
Anyway.
Okay, so I gather that the fact that there are like real world facts in a game can be quite engrossing and can lead you to want to learn more about those historical facts. But where do you stand on things like, Mass Effect has got an encyclopedia about itself. So I mean, you'd basically be looking into things that don't exist.
It's like studying lore. It's like as in lore as in LORE, not LAW.
Oh, I mean, this
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
The position I'm in. I mean, I studied classics at university, and I just thought it was amazing because I think it has like absolutely no applications to the real world, and I just thought it was great that it was just it was kind of socially acceptable for me to study this, and I don't know why. And for me, the Greco-Roman world is just another fantasy world for me to learn about. So when I came across games, I haven't played Mass Effect, I've played Dragon Age, I've played Elder Scrolls games, and when I came across this like completely 3D world, it was utterly fictional, but just had so much for me to sort of learn about. I thought it was amazing, but ultimately, that's not the sort of thing that has any sort of I don't know. I mean, it's not the you don't have any sort of real in sort of quotation marks.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think having a good knowledge of like Greco-Roman history is quite a credible thing. People will put a lot of cachet towards someone who can.
I don't know why.
Jot those facts off.
Honestly, I don't know why.
Yeah, but the same level of respect doesn't exist for fictional universes in any form.
And I find that baffling, mainly because I probably just don't view sort of knowledge of the classical world in high regard. Maybe I should. I don't know.
I mean, considering something you've spent your life studying.
Did you find that
It's only
you,
because the mean society lets me. I don't know why. Anyway, yeah. Sorry. The point I was trying to make before I made my stinky burp was we all know that Crusader Kings is going to come up
Yeah.
as a sort of example of a 3D world in sort of in the figurative sense of 3D. Because it's a game in which they have done their research. As in, if you start at any point in history from 1066 to 1337, which is the cutoff point, and it also spells leet. Just want to point that out.
I didn't realise that.
What?
Anyway, you can pick any sort of any person from sort of minor nobility, as in a baron, to sort of emperor of the Holy Roman Empire, and you would actually be playing at any point at that time, starting point, as a real person from history. And that's a pool of thousands of people, like literally thousands of people. And they didn't have to go into that much detail for the game engine to function. You could have had just as, in terms of like the turmoil of politics, you could have had just a greater experience.
Yeah.
But that information is there for you.
Yeah, and
You
also
can
the
look at-
larger events of the periods.
Depending on
Yeah.
where you start, yeah, most definitely. I mean, if you start at 1337, if you play as either England or France, you're starting at the 100 Years' War. You're in a state of war, if they're a real historical individual, or they actually have links to their Wikipedia page.
Yeah.
The thing is, I mean, didn't you start, Gertie? Didn't you start as a campaign as Simon de Montfort?
Yes, I did. Yeah, purely because he's from Leicester or is known as a figure from Leicester. And from doing that, I have to admit I learned a hell of a lot, or went outside of the game and learned a lot about kind of the history of medieval.
Oh, you learned about the man
England.
who expelled all the Jews from Leicester.
Well,
And
that was
for some
that
reason,
was from you.
and for some reason, Leicester named a university after him and a town hall
Yes.
or a concert hall after him.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that stuff I actually didn't know until I met
So,
you.
Maybe the Leicester City Council should have played Crusader Kings, and they probably would have honoured such a horrible individual.
I have to say, I don't think one of his traits in the game is expeller of the Jews.
Yeah, I don't.
Maybe
Yeah,
we need to add that, but-
anti-Semitic.
I suppose.
Yeah.
It's a game that teaches you a lot also about how politics worked at that time. And
Yeah. Were I a history teacher, I would use that in my lessons. And I mean, I wouldn't so much put it on sort of the recommended reading list, but I would just say, if you get a chance in between doing your homework, play this game.
Yeah.
Sure.
I think another area where you learn about history is allegories. I think to kind of move it away. Obviously, like there's all the classic Greek tales and things like that. Obviously, and kind of mythology. One I wanted to raise was Portal 2, which drew an extremely strong allegory to Prometheus.
Oh.
Obviously,
Go on.
Yeah, please go on.
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
I haven't played it, but I've watched videos of it.
So the idea is obviously Prometheus was the one who brought fire to the mortals, and the gods got angry, and then pecking birds and stuff. Was that that the story?
That one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's essentially the whole kind of the story of Portal 2 is basically the allegory of Prometheus, and I believe there's like hidden shots of old Greek paintings, where like one of the characters is within the is within one of the paintings of the guy who started Aperture Industries, who I can't remember the name of now. I'm just kind of forgetting everything. But yeah, I mean, it actually, I didn't learn about Prometheus. I didn't.
Sorry, Arjun, just be a bit more specific. I know you might want to be careful about spoilers for Portal 2, which is one of the best games I've ever played.
Yes.
But which character is supposed to be Prometheus in that allegory? Is it Shell? Is it the player character, or is it the head of Aperture? Is that what you're saying? Or
Let me double check that. I think the idea was that Chell is supposed to be an allegory for humankind, while GLaDOS GLaDOS is Prometheus, who gives the portal gun to Chell.
Fire, aka fire.
And she was punished for it. And so the idea was that obviously she was punished for it by being turned into a potato.
Huh.
Okay.
And
See, now that you're explaining it to me, I get the sense that that's exactly right.
Yeah.
But that wasn't apparent to me while I was playing it.
Yeah.
Neither.
It took some explanation from other websites.
So is that valid? Is that a valid example then?
I mean, the thing is that there's a photo of Cave Johnson, who's the CEO of Aperture, and in one of the paintings there is actually a picture of, I can't pronounce his name, but Aeschylus, who wrote
Aeschylus,
who wrote Prometheus Bound. So the story of Prometheus. So there was a picture that included the picture of the author of the story.
Okay. So it is there if you look for it.
Yeah. So like it's clear that like there are bits in the game that directly link itself to Prometheus. So it's not just a happy coincidence. It's a outright kind
GLaDOS, when you first find her as a potato, she's being pecked at a bird, pecked at by a bird, just like Prometheus.
Exactly. Yeah, and so it took like reading someone's kind of insights to it to find out. But, like that doesn't mean that like you don't, when you pick up on allegories, like if you already know about them, you feel like the story's better, or if you hear, or even if you read about it after you've played a game, you still think, wow, that's an amazing kind of story to be brought up.
I think that is a good example. I like it.
Also, there's a chapter called "Well, You Know the Old Formula: Comedy equals tragedy plus time," which I suppose is their kind of like broadly references to this allegory. That's really fascinating. I never knew
that's
that
really
about
cool.
Portal 2.
Sadly, it's not the sort of thing that you'd sort of understand through playing the game
unless you're very, very eagle-eyed.
And you spot that person. I mean, like I think like at what point does tangential learning stop becoming tangential learning? Like, say if someone saw that Cave Johnson painting, saw that picture of the weird dude who was in the painting, and then Googled who's that guy in the painting of Cave Johnson, and then that's when the kind of worms opens on what Prometheus is all about.
And Felix, as Gertie pointed out, he didn't know about Simon de Montfort's actions concerning the Jews until you told him. It wasn't Crusader Kings.
There is actually a Wikipedia link to his bio on that. So, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I've recently watched I don't know. I suppose it's I don't know what the term would be, a rumination on video games and learning by Daniel Floyd. He's quite a big YouTube critique, maybe, I don't know, or blogger, and he was just talking about a character in Final Fantasy called, is it Sephiroth? Yeah.
Sephiroth, yeah.
Yeah, which is actually something tied in with Judaism.
Yeah.
And he said, if 0.1% of the Final Fantasy or 0.01% of the Final Fantasy fan base Googled that, just were bothered, just said, that's a cool name, why don't I Google that? That would still sort of reach out to 10,000 people, more or less.
Yeah.
And that's at no extra sort of development cost. Just by adding little things. I mean, I think the word or the term that all the cool kids are using is not Easter egg.
Easter eggs.
Yeah.
Which what Arjun was just talking about in Portal 2.
Yeah, exactly.
Qualifies as an Easter egg. Yeah.
And is it? Can I lower the tone?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think you should.
Please God. I mean,
We've been waiting
we all
a long
taking off
time
our
for this to
trousers?
happen.
No, I think not lower the tone, but kind of lower the bar culturally from history and
sure.
ancient tales. I would know next to nothing about football, American football, golf, and hockey if it wasn't for playing all of those games.
You and me both.
Yeah.
like I wouldn't even known that like what football players are in which teams if I hadn't played like FIFA.
Yeah, I have really strange knowledge about football because I played Championship Manager from like 1995 until about 2001. So I know everything about the teams and the football players from that time and that time only.
Yeah.
I have that with World Cup '98.
Yeah.
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 But no, that's true. I think people do end up getting a massive amount of facts and figures that they pick up from games like that.
Yeah. I wouldn't be interested in watching the Super Bowl if I hadn't played Madden and understood the rules by playing and kind of like hitting myself up against the rules and understanding what they were. I mean,
I've never played a sports game about a sport that I didn't understand. I don't know why.
Yeah, I mean, I picked up Madden and I was like, how come this has happened and why is this happening? And then eventually it all kind of formed in my head. And then by the time I watched like a Super Bowl game, I was like, yeah, I know what's going on. This is all happening.
Oh, it broadened your horizons.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's lowering the tone in the slightest.
Yeah. And, you know, like, same with golf, you know.
You could equally talk about that. I mean, it's through playing video games, you've had something brought to your attention which you've enjoyed.
Yeah.
That you never would have had sort of placed in your lap.
Yeah.
I mean, sorry. First.
I was going to say, well, I was going to kind of like extend it out, but carry on.
I was going to extend it out. I mean, the example I'd use is music, like the soundtrack from Fallout 3 and Fallout New Vegas has brought an entire generation of music to my attention.
Yeah.
And I've actually sort of investigated further, and I've probably increased my my music library on my MP3 player by about 10% because of that.
Yeah.
Which is great. I listen to it on commutes.
Yeah. And you know, I think any game with a licensed soundtrack has the ability to do that for you. I mean, games without a licensed soundtrack can do that for you, but that's like related to the game directly itself. But if you're talking about learning, I think when you pick up a licensed soundtrack, you can kind of like say with Tony Hawk's Pro Skater, you know, you're picking up on like a skating subculture that has like various genres that are very kind of linked to it, like punk, ska, hip hop. You know, and those are very linked to kind of skating culture. But like I wouldn't have learnt about ska really if it hadn't been for, say, Tony Hawk's Pro Skater and FIFA 2000, which had Real Big Fish in it. I wouldn't have known that genre would have existed. I didn't know that genre existed until then.
I didn't learn anything about the music, like types of bands in the Tony Hawk games, but I definitely learnt about skating, something that otherwise I would have had absolutely no interest in.
Yeah, you learn about the names of all the moves by just bashing.
I know what a kickflip is. I know broadly what a lot of the stuff is in that, even just beyond like simple stuff like ollies and whatever. Didn't make me want to skate. It made me like further enjoy watching some friends of mine trying to skate and falling over and hurting themselves.
He was trying to go for a nosebone 180.
That is a clear example for me of tangential learning.
Yeah, I'm sorry to keep using that term.
But I mean, I'm wondering where, you know, why should we call it tangential when some games actually full on will make you learn stuff? Like the example I want to bring up is Minecraft, where you learn processes in the game to make things happen. Like you learn such and such a recipe will make a pickaxe, for example. That's just purely
would
a video game thing.
Sort of cerebral.
Sorry?
Would the term be sort of cerebral? In that it's sort of like some sort of I don't know. It's like it's like an academic exercise in that it's like a Sudoku puzzle. In a way, it sort of wakes up those sort of parts of the brain.
Yeah, no, I agree with that.
And Redstone, if you actually really, really want to sort of if you really want to stave off Alzheimer's, you sort of make a computer using Redstone circuits.
Say regarding Redstone, I'd say that has definite parallels to electronics in the real world. I mean, it's not exactly the same as the way electricity works, in that you need two wires going into a light bulb and an energy source to make it power on. With Redstone, you only ever need one wire. But the logic circuits that are involved in it are the same, pretty much.
Yeah.
It teaches about logic gates. It teaches about how microchips work and computers work. And I think for many kids, that's going to be a gateway into the world of IT, computer science, and electronics. So I think tangential learning is very much involved in that regard.
No, I agree with you there, but I think that's an example where it's not tangential anymore. It's just learning.
No, it really. In fact, I've used Minecraft for that on many occasions. James, who's featured on our podcast, I think it was Theris 108. In fact, we haven't actually introduced ourselves in this.
Yeah, I realised that 5
that's
minutes
true.
ago.
Can we edit that in?
Oh,
No.
we can just. It doesn't matter. Let's. It's
You just do it
okay.
now.
Let's just
James
roll with
and
it.
I, who are sort of
Do it live.
history enthusiasts, tried to make a full-scale or sort of one-for-one replica of the Roman Forum in ancient Rome, and we thoroughly enjoyed that. And we actually got a lot of kicks out of just making it as accurate as we possibly could. And that's the sort of thing that video games allow you to. But that's kind of active learning as well. So I suppose it kind of adds fuel to the notion that these aren't mindless killing exercises.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, and
as
there's been
most
coverage-
people who read the Daily Mail think.
There's been coverage of that in, I think we all saw about a month ago or so. There was an article on the BBC's website that was about how Minecraft was helping kids to be social and learn about all kinds of stuff.
I mean, one thing
It's actually quite well known now.
One thing I saw recently about Minecraft is there's something called the Google Quantum Lab, and they've released a version of Minecraft which has quantum physics in the game. So there are some way that quantum physics is incorporated into Minecraft, and they've basically released it with the intention that people will mess around with it. Young people will start playing around with these tools, and maybe that will lead them to develop an interest in computing or in quantum physics.
I'm not sure.
So it's a very intentional process on the part of this Google company.
That's cool. I'm not sure if this is could be regarded as any form of learning, because it was a thoroughly stupid device. But Laurie developed a perpetual motion machine, which is just a minecart on a track. It just dipped down and then it went up and dipped down again. It was on a sort of very short or very small circuit.
Yeah.
I
think those sort of
perpetual
things.
motion device.
Those sort of
I'd
things are
say
really
that,
clever.
I was going to say about perpetual motion devices and what it teaches you about physics in Minecraft. I used to play Tekkit, and in that particular version of Minecraft, it was possible to create a perpetual motion machine, and you quickly realised why that wouldn't work in this universe.
I don't know. I suppose you would have to be well read in that sort of department.
When your house becomes swamped in bones or blaze powder to the point where you no longer know what to do with it, and it starts to fill up the rest of the world because something is being created out of nothing each time, you realise that our universe isn't really cut out for that.
Okay.
I mean, I just think that if Minecraft was available when I was a young kid, and if this weird experimental quantum physics stuff was available as well, I very well could have just been completely engrossed in
Do you
learning
think you would
about
have
this
done,
stuff.
a science degree instead?
I don't know if I can go that far, but I mean,
Okay.
I think it has the potential to really influence where people go in terms of their career path or their interests.
I
I
suppose.
mean, wasn't our Minecraft just Lego?
I suppose,
I
but
think
We
it
just
was
did
like
it in
a
a
technical
non-video
Lego.
game format.
it was just a means of sort of playing with Lego without injuring your feet when you get out of the bed first thing in the morning.
But I mean,
Yes.
one of the things that Minecraft adds on top of Lego is a fully working electronics simulation in the form of redstone. So-
Lego is construction, but in an aesthetic form, whereas Minecraft has quite a lot of function. It's like Technic, Lego Technic, because that had gears and shafts and ways to make vehicles and things like that. So I think it's I'd say Minecraft, depending on how you played with it, you could either just make it as something that made. So technically, it responds to both sides of your brain, your creative side and kind of functional creation as well.
And you can sort of, I mean, if you're not feeling massively sort of functional, as it were, you can still just be creative. You can be as creative as you want. I've seen some amazing 3D constructions in mine. I'm sure we all have.
That's it. Yeah, I think it does marry those two aspects of creativity and then kind of technical expertise. You know, you can develop a technical expertise in Minecraft.
And I mean, and you don't even have to. As I said, you don't even have to. If you want to just make, Harrenhal from Game of Thrones, you can just do that. In fact, I actually saw that recently, and it was an amazing construction. I was thoroughly impressed.
Yeah.
Sorry, I don't know what.
I mean, okay, I guess it's like Alex said. You know, we've kind of looked at lots of good examples, and it's like there's no argument against it. But
that is true. If anything, I just wanted to talk about how awesome video games can be. That was kind of my hidden agenda.
Should we try and find?
Let's try and go against it now. Video games are terrible.
Yeah.
Oh, I can probably give you plenty of examples of games that are just turds.
I have an example of a video game that when I played it, I thought it was being intentionally misleading, like kind of the opposite of what we're talking about here. Has anyone ever heard of a game called Shadow of Rome for the PlayStation 2?
Only because you've told me about it, just to annoy me.
Anyone other than Felix?
Nope. No, I haven't heard about it.
Well, forgive me while I very much spoil it for you.
No!
Shadow of Rome is a combat/stealth game set in the aftermath of Julius Caesar's assassination. And it started out as like a murder mystery, like who killed Julius Caesar? So you start out as Agrippa and Octavianus, who those who among us who know about Roman history know that went on to become Augustus, the next emperor. But in this, there's no reference to that. He's just like some vagabond on the streets. And Agrippa becomes this, has to go into hiding and becomes a gladiator, despite the fact that Agrippa in Roman history was a great general, correct?
Yes, he was basically Emperor Augustus's go-to guy.
So to cut a long story short, the game turns into this like kind of really weird. You get these scenes with the main villain Antonius, i.e.
Mark Antony,
but he's called Antonius in the game, who becomes like a comic book villain and just like is evil for the sake of being evil, and it just comes up with excuses for you to like sneak around Roman palaces as Octavianus and like get into the costumes of Roman legionaries and so on, and then go to Agrippa and be in the Colosseum and attack people, and eventually you get to fight tigers and elephants, and you get a special reward for kicking the elephant. And it was just a really stupid game, but it was all couched in this like very serious historical plot that when I looked it up, I discovered was very different from how the history was, based on a premise that made absolutely no sense in the context of it.
I was going to say this. I think this brings up a more important question. How important is it for video game developers to try at least to faithfully portray the real world events upon which the game is based? Because games are so real, they're so engaging often, that the narrative stays with people long after they've forgotten about the graphics and the mechanics of the game.
Not necessarily. If you've ever played a Resident Evil game, you know that's the gameplay that stays with you rather than the story, because the
I'm not saying it's always the same, but I'm saying
plate.
often in a game. Resident Evil's a game that's not based in the real world. For example, when you a lot
Wait,
of...
are you saying Spain isn't like Resident Evil 4?
Can I bring up God of War? Because God of War, I mean, there's it's kind of two layers. Like, do you really want, like, if anything ever has to like be couched slightly in history, it has to be completely faithful? I mean, I enjoyed God of War, but at the same time, I kind of know that like an angry man called Kratos didn't kill the God of War and every other god in the history of Greek mythology.
Oh, spoilers!
And also, it's mythology, so you can just say we're just adding to the rich
rich
tapestry
history.
that is Greek mythology, which was often
Yeah.
sort of contradictory anyway.
Yeah.
I think
That's kind of
Yeah,
their get out of
I
jail
was-
free card for just sort of creating essentially the Michael Bay account of Greek mythology.
Yeah.
If I can just very
I was-
quickly cap off the thing about Shadow Realm, the really interesting thing I found, Felix, was that when I first described it to you, probably like a few years ago, I was describing this Antonius character, which I found like utterly ridiculous and so unrepresentative of the real history that had inspired this game. And you said like, oh, but no, that doesn't. He could be kind of a dick.
Yeah,
Mark Antony.
he was
And
in the middle of one of his speeches in the Senate. He was so drunk he threw up into another man's toga.
it just it made me kind of rethink like what I'd seen of that game. You know, maybe you can like depict things in an unhistorical way that still says something about the time period.
When Octavian, as he's known sort of in the in English, although Octavianus is actually closer to his real name, when he was actually sort of flagging up the fact that Mark Antony was sleeping around, he actually wrote a letter back to him which basically said, what does it really matter that I'm screwing these people? Seriously, what the hell are you talking about?
It made me kind of like rethink my opinion on that game, although it is still definitely bullshit because
most definitely.
of
I
many
was actually
things.
restraining
like,
myself when you
for
were
example,
talking about the premise of the game.
The game takes a very minor figure from the time, a man called Decius Brutus, and makes him basically the kingpin who was behind Julius Caesar's assassination. But it still did make me kind of think, there is that old thing that they say history is written by the winners. And this game eventually made me think a little bit differently about what it had portrayed.
But I think that's only kind of if you sort of reflect upon it after you've done a bit of research.
Yeah, overall, it was probably very misleading to a lot of like people my age when I was like, 16 when I
But
when
do
I
you
played.
think on the question of whether games have like a responsibility to represent it accurately, I don't know. I've played so many games where they've kind of taken a real historical event and twisted it or turned it a certain way, and I don't find it like a bad thing. I can look past that, but there's certain reasons that that would happen that have to be questioned.
So,
the game I remember is Red Alert.
Yeah, I was thoroughly annoyed that they completely changed the way Einstein met Hitler.
Okay.
It didn't happen like that in real life. In real life, Hitler electrocuted Einstein.
What? Well, that's a little Red Alert joke for everyone who has played that game, which is now like 20 years old.
Yeah.
It's 20 years old.
But anyway,
I never got that far. Thanks for the spoilers,
Red
Felix.
It's in the opening!
I was going through the entire anthology. I bought it like 3 months ago. I'm still on Command & Conquer 1.
Watch that scene before
unfortunate.
gameplay commences.
While we're on World War II, I mean, movies are just as
Take
bad. I
the
mean,
liberties,
look at the Enigma
Yeah.
movie.
I don't know.
This is-
I
this
think
is
it's
the
actually
thing.
more of a problem in movies than in video games, because if you know where to look.
I think
If
the
you-
fact is that like movies try to say based on a true story, whereas games will not necessarily say, like, I'm guessing Shadow of Rome didn't say based on historical events. And
That's worth looking up. I really hope it did.
But yeah, I think that's the way. I think that's the thing. Like, if a film kind of takes its liberties, like, it will make it more interesting. Like, people will go to see something if it kind of said somewhere based on a true story, because you'd be like, oh my god, this is a true story. But like, obviously, the wording of it is based, so they can kind of go nuts with it, really.
And that base is bullshit.
Yes.
Yeah.
The Wikipedia
No, the base
page
is
said
fine,
it's
and then it's just
loosely
like slapped
based.
on top. Yeah.
It's the question of how loosely based it is on it. And the thing is, these media, games and films are so immediate and so visceral that people on a subconscious level will often accept what is given to them. And
Yeah.
Yeah.
Alex has just mentioned Enigma, and I want to bring up President Vladimir Putin's recent outburst against American games and the way they always portray Russians to be violent, sadistic, always the baddies, basically.
I think that's a very,
always
very
the
good
ones
point,
who are no
actually.
good, useless.
Yeah.
Are you saying the Russians don't plan to invade the east coast of America?
No, I think that's a very good point, Rich. Because sorry to just sweep past that joke, Felix, but
It wasn't very funny. It's a serious business.
It's a good point because
dealing with Russians.
somebody said history's written by the winners.
That was me,
Well,
actually.
yeah, Alex coined that.
'Cause he
But the truth is that the stories and games are written by the developers, who often happen to be Western developers or Japanese developers, and the ideologies of those particular countries. The fact that Russians are portrayed in a certain light, the fact that Middle Eastern people are portrayed in a certain light. Those are all misrepresented, I would say, in a lot of games.
Yeah, what happened? The story that was about was well, first of all, Battlefield Bad Company was taken off shelves in Russia a few years ago.
Ah, right.
Because of the way it represented like the Russian part in the Second World War.
Sure. Well,
and
I
there
mean,
was
I think,
some recently about it.
yeah, I think if you turn the tables and imagine there was a Russian game that portrayed American military involvement in a particular light that was, not the standard line and was completely against what history tells us in a sense, you wouldn't bat an eyelid that America banned that game, and they probably would.
Yeah.
Do you know what this recent story was about Russia banning games, or they made a particular statement about how they would feel about
I
it?
haven't seen this one, no.
What I understand is that the President Putin recently made a speech saying he is going to encourage homegrown Russian video game
That's it,
development to combat the
Yeah.
misrepresentation of Russia and Russians in Western games.
Which
Sure.
a lot of people took to mean he's rolling video games into the Russian propaganda machine.
Oh, I don't
Yeah.
know. Let's
Basically,
face
yeah.
it, Russia has often served a massive shit sandwich in video games.
and films and a lot of other
Yeah.
types of media.
I mean, another good example was Argo, Academy Award-winning film,
Yeah.
best film, wasn't it? And it essentially overplays the Americans' role, and downplays a lot of the Canadian and British role in getting those people out of
The
Iran.
hostage crisis.
Yeah.
Sure.
Same happened with Black Hawk Down. There were a lot of Indian troops in the front line there,
Yeah,
and they lost a lot of troops. But
Yeah.
there's,
that's obviously
mean,
not.
do you
So,
see
yeah.
the Indians in that film?
Sure. So I think the question is, are games just replicating that means of producing their medium?
Yeah.
Are they doing the
Yeah.
same things that films are?
I think the good thing is that we're able to kind of put a microscope on these things and say that it's wrong, and not deny that these things should never be made, but at least hopefully this gets involved in discourse in future games.
Sure.
I do actually think there's kind of as I said at the beginning of this, there is some sort of there's greater variation in the experience you're going to get in video games. And I think that kind of is a good and bad thing.
Yeah.
Because you've kind of got, the sort of whooping hoorah American glory film type game, which is probably worse than a lot of films you've seen,
Yeah.
including
Well,
Black Hawk Down. But at the other end of the spectrum, you have got Crusader Kings 2.
Absolutely. Yeah.
These
So-
are growing pains for what's still quite, a fairly young medium compared to the likes of film, and obviously
Even film, which is a young
But-
medium in itself,
Yeah.
I mean,
comparatively.
it's just that the
The
nature
fact
of a
that
lot
the
of
fact
games.
that the Russians want to censor video games, video games should take that as a compliment.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think the nature of games is that you need to have a bad guy, and it's been the easiest thing in the world to just make the bad guy, whoever the war is against at the time. So whether it's someone from the
that
Middle
said,
East or Russian.
or whoever America has had a war against. This
Yes.
is why a lot
Yeah.
of villains are still British,
Yeah.
because of the War of Independence.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
It's something that never ceases to amuse me, that they just can't get over this.
There's three main enemies.
Yeah. Yeah,
the Middle
Arabs,
East, Russia,
British.
and the British. Yeah.
The Russians.
Some games will just go for aliens or
Yeah.
robots.
British aliens.
Yeah.
Oh, come on. We have to... I can't wait
yeah,
for a
that's
sort
the
of
Saints
American
Row-
or
Killzone
independence
franchise,
game
I
set
believe.
in space.
The
Saints Row
Killzone
4
franchise.
actually has Saints
Yeah,
Row 4
Kills-
has a British alien.
Oh yeah, that's true.
All the Killzone games,
British
the main enemy is a British alien.
That's
There you
just
go.
combining the best of both worlds.
Oh, okay. Again,
The
so
best
on
of-
that note, I think we've all come to the conclusion. I mean, basically, this is my hidden agenda that I just want to talk about how awesome video games are, and that's kind of the pinnacle of how awesome video games can be. You can have a British alien as a villain, a main
can kill them.
antagonist in a video game.
You can kill them multiple times.
Oh, that's cool. I just want to play. I want to play that game. I want to play most of the games you played, including Shadow of Rome.
Yeah.
If anything, I think I've actually come to. I don't know. I'm more inclined to play the games that aren't learning exercises now. I've taught myself out of.
I think
The
I think if you
you
want to
know
pick up
too
on
much.
pick up on like wrongness of games, like things where games like things where games are inaccurate. That's kind of like a thing within itself, isn't it? Like you're kind of like practicing your knowledge and your understanding of the world or whatever to kind of say, yeah, that's not realistic, or that's not true to form.
That's true. Yeah, you'd only notice if you knew otherwise.
Another thing I'd like to bring up is just like there are two skills that I want to mention as well. So the first one was like I learned how to make a compass, like with everyday objects, like through Monkey Island.
Ah.
Monkey Island taught me how to make
Go
a
on.
compass.
How do you do it?
Because you magnetize an end of a needle, you put it in a cork, and then you put it in water, and then the magnetized needle will point north.
Point to the north.
That's amazing.
That's quite a good thing.
And
to
Monkey
Oh.
Island taught me that. And the second thing,
Unless you magnetize the needle with the south end of the magnet, and
Yeah.
then you've got a compass that's the wrong way round, so you get lost and die.
yeah,
Shut up, Alex.
You get lost and die.
you make a needle out of the magnet, and then you put
Video
it. Into a cork.
games kill children.
Okay.
This is
I mean,
what Arjun told us.
this is probably a good way of wrapping it up. Just say one thing you learned because of video games.
Yeah. Okay.
So I suppose we could give Arjun another one. So go on.
So my other thing was more of a skill. Rhythm. Playing Guitar Hero. Playing Guitar Hero greatly improved my general rhythm and playing along with music. Like kind of understanding that every time you clack the thing, like that's a beat of the rhythm. If you're playing at a lower level, you're basically playing on the beat. You're going clap, 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 clap. And then as you see that kind of like, and you see like how a rhythm can play out, and like those rhythms get multiplied throughout hundreds of songs in popular music as we speak today, and you can kind of like get a rhythm along with it at least, and then almost like bring that to your guitar and kind of take that sense of rhythm that a lot of people think is like just kind of born within people, and take it away and actually make yourself a better musician.
Okay. All right. G.
I learned how to reverse park an articulated lorry thanks to Euro Truck Simulator 2. So that was that's something that's actually quite challenging. And now if I was confronted with
Dean
that-
can't say he can do that because he lost half his lorry.
when
I go
Dean
next,
did get
'cause
to- when
my
Dean did
game
get
is
to
also-
parking, I think it took him over 15 minutes to park that thing. But no, if I was confronted with that task today, I would actually not be confident about controlling the vehicle, but I would know the mechanics of how turning the wheel this way does that thing and so forth. So that's something I've learned recently.
Okay. Alex.
Euro Truck is also mine, and it's interesting that Gertie chose it, but for different reasons. I was just going to say I learnt the lonely but serene joy of being a trucker in Europe, and how fun it can be to just go from one place to another. Ironically, after, according to Steam, I think I may have left it on overnight or something, but it says 61 hours. I have no clue how to park an articulated lorry. I just couldn't do it. I
All right,
never learned.
Rich.
Yeah.
Well, this is going to be interesting because I'd say while it didn't teach me to actually park an articulated lorry or do anything that actually I could apply in the real world with any confidence, it certainly gave me the appreciation of how skilled a driver has to be when they park an articulated lorry. I realised
This
how
all
much this game has taught me to
Learning.
appreciate the efforts of our haulier friends.
Of our Polish friends.
When I was in Austria and I saw someone trying to park a double articulated lorry while
Whoa.
backing it up a narrow hill. A narrow
God.
street on a hill.
That's
And
like a
he
level
managed
8
it with a
activity.
grace that I admired. And that is all thanks to Euro Truck Simulator 2.
Wow.
Okay.
That game-
I'm gonna go slightly off record. I don't know, off theme. I'm gonna say
Euro Truck Simulator 1.
yes, exactly, Alex.
That game is clearly the essence of learning.
No, what I was gonna say is that Fallout 3 has taught me that if I'm ever gonna eat a human cadaver, I should not do it in public. Because apparently that causes quite a stir. So anyway, so what we actually need to do just before we wrap it up is firstly introduce ourselves. Because we didn't do that at the start of the podcast.
That's a good
So I'm
thing
going to
to
say
do.
Introduction.
I am Felix, aka This is Jazz, and I'm joined by insert your name here.
I am Gertie.
Richard,
also known as Tinkle Cosmos.
Helios Rain, hello.
Arjun,
Alright, so
Argy
that's-
Bargy, Arjun, that's me.
And I'm Alex, and I don't like online names, so I'm just Alex Cole.
Okay, cool,
AKA
cool, cool.
Boner Dude,
And
420.
also, in true BFVG tradition, we need to rate something out of. Actually, because this is the first podcast in which we've got 5 people, we're going to have to rate something out of 50.
Yeah, and then scale it down to 40.
Mm.
Yeah. Okay. Okay.
Everyth's out of 40. Goddamn.
So what should
No,
we
no,
rate
sorry, we have
out
to
of
rate
40?
it. No, we have to rate it out of 8
Rate it-
each.
8. If we rate it out of 8, yeah.
Learning.
Learning.
Learning itself.
Yeah.
Well, in general,
Yeah, learning. Just learning.
Hmm.
or how about what video games teach us? I don't know.
Hmm. Isn't it going to be quite unanimous?
Ooh. Okay, let's just. I don't know. Why don't we just rate our morning bowel movements?
Yeah.
I refuse.
Oh.
Okay, in which case we can do it out of 40. Now that you've got somebody to refuse.
I'm happy with this arrangement.
Okay, mine was. I'm gonna say it's a 4. It's pretty grim.
I concur, a 4.
I'm gonna say mine was a 3. It wasn't. I mean, like I thought it was gonna be good, but just really, my perceptions were. Let
It's
down.
basically like the film The Last Airbender.
Yeah.
So much expectations, and then it was just a turkey of a film.
Yeah. It's not very.
Anyway, Alex.
I think mine would normally have been a bit of a lower ranking, but considering it was after 3 nights of Indian food, I'm going to give it like a 6.
Okay, so that puts us. That's still 17 out of
yeah.
40.
Wow. And I above everything else, have learnt something today.
What's
And
that?
that's what all of your bowel movements were like.
Oh, good. Okay, probably a good place to stop that.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Well.
Cool.
Now all we need to do is wait for Google to collate our responses there and give us the appropriate advertising each.
Okay. Right. Okay. So everyone, say goodbye.
Good night.
Bye.
Bye.